Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What historical mystery are we tackling today?
This time, we're diving into the history of Bireh.
Oh, wow, Bireh. That's a great choice. Full of history.
It is. And to guide us, we have this fascinating Arabic text that one of our listeners was kind enough to share. They always seem to find the most amazing sources.
I've got to hand it to them. They have a knack for digging up hidden gems.
They do. And this one, let me tell you, is a gold mine of information.
Yeah.
It takes us all the way from, you ready for this, the Stone Age.
No way! The Stone Age. That's incredible.
I know, right? To think that Bireh's story stretches back that far.
It really makes you realize how much history is beneath our feet. So, what kind of picture does this text paint of Bireh in those early days?
Well, according to the text, archaeologists have uncovered pottery shards, tools, even tombs, all dating back to around 4500 BC or even earlier.
Wow, 4500 BC.
Wow.
That just blows my mind. Those tombs, especially. It makes you wonder what they can tell us about those early inhabitants. Their beliefs, their rituals, their relationship with life and death.
Exactly. It's like those tombs are a direct link to a past that we can only begin to imagine.
It's like a window into their world. And it wasn't all just, serious rituals and burials. The text also mentions that they found wine presses dating back to the Bronze Age.
Hold on, wait. Wine production in Bireh. All those centuries ago, I never would have guessed that.
Right. It's amazing what a little detail like that can do to change your understanding of the past, right? We go from thinking of these people as just surviving to suddenly they have a thriving culture, a complex economy.
It just goes to show you, those ancient civilizations were far more sophisticated than we often give them credit for.
That they were.
So we've got early humans, glimpses into their spiritual world, and a flourishing wine trade. What comes next in our journey through Bireh's history?
Well, as we move through the centuries, Bireh's location really starts to play a critical role in its story.
Because it was on that route linking Jerusalem to the north, right?
Exactly. It was a prime spot, a crossroads. And you know what happens when you're at a crossroads? Everyone wants a piece of you.
Oh boy, I can only imagine. So who are some of the major players vying for control of Bireh?
Well, you name it. The Byzantines, Romans before them, and of course the Ottomans, they all left their mark on the city.
It's like a layer cake of history. You peel back one era, and there's another one right beneath it. What are some of the most striking examples of these empires leaving their mark on Bireh's landscape?
Oh, there's so many. Imagine you're walking through present-day Bireh, and you come across the ruins of a Byzantine church, beautiful mosaics, hints of those early Christian hymns echoing through the centuries.
It's incredible to think that something that's now ruins was once a vibrant hub of worship.
It is. And then, not too far away, you might stumble upon a caravanserai, a grand inn from the Ottoman period.
Now, you can't just casually mention a caravanserai and not paint us a picture. What did these places look like? What was their role in Bireh's story?
Oh, they were amazing. Picture bustling courtyards filled with merchants from all corners of the world, camels laden with spices and silks, languages swirling through the air. It must have been incredible. These caravanserai weren't just places to sleep. They were hubs of commerce, of cultural exchange.
I can almost hear the sounds, smell the spices. It's like taking a step back in time.
And it was through these bustling caravanserai that new ideas, technologies, even stories flowed into Bireh.
Shaping its character.
Absolutely, shaping its very character.
That's amazing. So we've got this incredible blend of cultures, this fusion of architectural styles. Did the text go into any detail about how these different influences played out in the daily lives of people in Bireh?
It did. It's so fascinating. The text talks about everything from religious practices and architectural styles to even the way language evolved. It's clear that the people of Bireh weren't just passive recipients of these influences,
Right.
They absorbed, adapted, they blended those external elements with their own traditions to create something truly unique.
They made it their own.
Exactly. They made it their own.
It's incredible to think about all those layers of history, all those different cultural influences shaping Bireh over the centuries. But I'm also curious, when you have these powerful empires coming and going, what happens to the stories of everyday people? How do they experience these shifts? Do they resist, adapt, or find some way to carve out their own space within those changes?
It's a question that I think we grapple with a lot, right? Trying to understand those individual experiences within those larger historical narratives.
Yeah.
And this text, thankfully, it gives us some really poignant glimpses into those personal stories.
Oh, I love that. Like, what Give us an example.
Well, there's one story that really stuck with me. It takes place in the early 1900s during the British Mandate period. A man from Albira decides to emigrate to America.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking early 20th century, a time of immense change around the world. What was this man's story? What kind of challenges did he face?
Well, he arrives in America. He's made this incredible journey, right? Full of hopes and dreams for a new beginning. And he's immediately confronted with prejudice, discrimination. The text tells us that he was actually denied entry.
Oh, wow.
Based solely on his ethnicity, his place of origin.
It's heartbreaking, but it's a story that unfortunately feels all too familiar, even today. The challenges of immigration, the struggle for belonging, it's something that connects us across time and cultures.
It does. It really does. And I think that's what makes this text so powerful. It doesn't shy away from those difficult realities. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths about the past and how they continue to resonate in the present. But, it's important to remember that Albira's story, much like the story of this traveler, is not solely defined by hardship. There's this incredible spirit of resilience that shines through.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that resilience, especially as we move into the 20th century. How did Albira navigate the dramatic changes of that period, particularly the latter half of the century?
Well, the text does a really interesting job of highlighting the profound impact of the Oslo Accords on Albira in the 1990s.
Okay, so for those who might not be familiar with the Oslo Accords, how would you sum up their significance?
It was this major turning point. These agreements led to the establishment of the Palestinian National Authority, which meant a degree of self-governance for the Palestinian people. And for a city like Albira, this translated into some really significant changes.
Like what? What were some of the most notable shifts that Albira experienced as a result of these agreements?
Well, for starters, there was a huge population boom. People were drawn to Albira for a number of reasons. Part of it was natural growth, but there was also this influx of people who had been displaced from other parts of Palestine after 1948.
So a city in transition.
Exactly. And with that transition came all sorts of challenges, right? Housing shortages, evolving demographics, really just trying to adapt to this new reality.
I imagine there are also growing pains, so to speak, that came with that rapid growth.
Yeah.
Did the text touch on any of those challenges?
It did. It talks about the strain on resources, on infrastructure, really the need to balance that rapid economic development with preserving Albira's unique cultural heritage.
A challenge that many cities around the world are grappling with, even today. Yeah. It's like history rhyming, isn't it?
It really is.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from ancient settlements to the complexities of the 20th century. Yeah. But before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to connect all these threads back to you, the listener, who's truly taking a deep dive into this Arabic text.
What are the key takeaways, the big ideas that we hope you'll carry with you from this conversation?
Well, if I had to distill it down, I'd say there are three big takeaways, three threads that run through Albira's story. First and foremost, it's a story about resilience.
Resilience. I like that.
This is a city that has seen it all, right? Empires rising and falling, colonization, displacement, rapid modernization. And through it all, Albira has always found a way to adapt, to rebuild, to hold on to its identity.
It's like you said earlier, those layers upon layers of history, each one leaving its mark, but never erasing what came before. Exactly. And that actually leads to the second takeaway, which is that history is not linear, right? It's not this straight line from point A to point B.
Right.
It's more like a tapestry, all of these interconnected events, individual stories, broader forces, all weaving together to create this rich and complex picture. Albira's story is unique, but it's also inseparable from those larger narratives of the region and the world.
Right, like that story of the man who emigrates to America. It's a personal story, but it also speaks to those global forces of migration, of prejudice, of the human desire for a better life, which are still relevant centuries later.
Exactly. And, that brings us to the third takeaway, which is simply this. We've only scratched the surface.
We always say that. But it's true.
This text, it gives us these incredible glimpses into Albira's past, but it also leaves us with more questions than answers. And I think that's a good thing.
It is. What are some of the questions that you're left with? The ones that you hope our listeners will ponder as they dive deeper into this text and Al-Bireh's history on their own.
Well, for example, the text mentions the Oslo Accords, but it doesn't really delve into the specifics of how those agreements transformed life in Al-Bireh. How did they impact the city's relationship with its neighbors? What new opportunities did they create, or what new challenges arose? And what about those earlier periods, like the Stone Age? What can those artifacts tell us about the spiritual beliefs, the social structures of those early inhabitants? There's so much more to uncover.
It makes you wonder, too, about the voices that might be missing from this particular text. What was the role of women in shaping Al-Bireh's identity? How did everyday people experience and navigate those cultural shifts brought about by the arrival of new empires, new ideas?
Exactly. It's about taking this text as a starting point, a springboard for further exploration. Compare it with other historical accounts. Seek out first-hand testimonies, dig into archaeological records.
There's a whole world of knowledge waiting to be discovered.
And that's what makes this work so exciting. It's a reminder that history is not static. It's not just a collection of facts and figures in a textbook.
It's alive.
It's alive, and it's constantly evolving as we ask new questions, uncover new perspectives.
And that's what we encourage all of you to do. Keep asking those questions, keep exploring, keep diving deeper. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure, as always.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy exploring.